Hey, this is Craig the Pool Man with Pool Specialist. Today we have a short video for you on how to install a sand filter. This happens to be a Pentair TR100. It would be identical for a Pentair TR60. Also, Jandy has a line of a JS100 and a JS60. So a lot of people don't realize that these numbers, TR100, JS100, TR60, JS60, refer to the actual amount of gallons per minute that can go through the filter. So a TR60 is designed for 60 gallons per minute. A TR100 is designed for 100 gallons per minute. A TR140 is designed for 140 gallons a minute. And that is what the specifications are. We like to use multi-port valves on the front of them for a variety of reasons, and we have particular ways that we like to plumb them in to improve the flow, and then also particular ways of product that we're going to use, such as pea gravel and sand, again to increase the flow and improve the filtration of the filter. So we're going to show you all these products and demonstrate what the filter looks like installed, and hopefully this will be helpful. Okay, so we did not install this pump, but I want to point out a couple things. One is whoever installed this, it's kind of old school. This is what's called a CPVC nipple, and although that's better than a PVC nipple, it's still probably not the best solution, or it is not the best solution. Also, they use Teflon tape. Teflon tape does not work on pipe over 1 inch, and this is a 2-inch pipe. So the ideal product to use here would be something called True Blue, which is a pipe dope that is resistant to chemicals and water and things like that. So this is, in my opinion, incorrect. What we would have done is we would have put a high temp union on here. We also would have put a valve in front of it, because this is in its own room and the valves are outside the room. So it makes it kind of inconvenient to change or empty this pump basket. So you have to go outside, close all the valves, otherwise you're going to lose prime on the pump. What we use is we use something called a high temp union. So this is a high temp union, it screws into here, and then you'll notice that we come up, and we come up about 1 foot, and we're going into a sweep. Not a 90, but a sweep. And the reason they do this is because the water will flow around the sweep. If you come into a 90, it's like hitting a wall, and it makes the pump work a lot harder, and it requires more energy for the pump to function. So we come into a sweep, we're sweeping down to the floor, and we come up into the multi-port. You'll notice again, I've used a threaded union, and we're going to give you the part number for this, and we're also going to show you the incorrect way to do it. We'll paste that into the video in a minute. But you're going to come into the input. This is actually labeled, and then this is what we call a multi-port. It has a position for waste, close, backwash, recirculate, rinse, and of course filter. And you will want to be able to use all of these different modes depending on what's going on with your system. So I would highly recommend putting multi-port on any filter, whether it's sand, cartridge, DE, etc. So we have our multi-port here. This is my favorite one. They make a high flow one, which is all glue in, and the problem with that is if you have to change it, then you have to cut pipes, and you will have to change it. That's not a maybe, it's a guarantee. And so that is why we use threaded unions. This is threaded back here, this is threaded here. So when this multi-port goes, and it will because it's a wear item just like your tires on your car, we simply have to unscrew the unions, we pull it out, and we put the new multi-port in, and it's about a 5-minute job versus about an hour job. And depending on how many times you have to cut this pipe, you're going to run out of couple room, and you may wind up having to replumb larger areas. So you want to use unions. The Jandy multiport actually comes with the unions. Pentair multiports do not, so you're going to have to purchase these. So this is our multiport. And when we actually get going with this filter, you'll notice there is a label on the filter and it says attention installer. Before pouring sand into this filter, check the laterals for their snugness. So you want to put your hand down in there and you want to check all of the laterals to make sure they're snug. Not killer tight, but hand tight, right? Because if they're very loose, they could fall out and then you're going to wind up having sand get back into your pool. It also says on here, make sure that you fill water up to a level above the laterals. Personally, I like to fill it up about halfway. And what we typically do is we will turn the filter on and we will run it without sand in it to make sure that we don't have any leaks. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put the top on it, and we're going to put it actually in filter mode, run some water into it, and bring it fully up to pressure to make sure that we don't have any leaks on the bulkhead, that we don't have any leaks on the drain plug or anything like that. I mean, it is possible, it's rare, but occasionally you do get a filter that has a bad bulkhead or a bad drain plug. And you don't want to put 1,000 pounds of sand into this filter and find out that you have a leak. So test it before you put the sand into it.
This is a brand new Multiport straight out of the box. And what I want you to notice is that this is actually what's called a side mount Multiport. They also make them for the top. If you zoomed into here, you would notice that that says pump. And if you zoom into here, you're going to notice that that says return. On the opposite side, if you look at this one, it says waste. So those are your three connections. So of course, this is going to go to your pump, and this is going to go off to the return of the pool. Now, a lot of people, there's a variety of ways that you can actually thread onto these, and you have what's called a threaded adapter, and in this case this is a 2-inch. This would be a 2-inch male thread, and it goes to a 2-inch PVC slip. And what they do is they literally, some people use Teflon tape, which is incorrect. Some people use pipe dope, and in particular you would have to use something called True Blue, which is a chemical resistance heavier body pipe dope, and then that threads in. And we strongly recommend that you don't do this. This is the way that most builders do it. And the reason that this is a bad idea is if this gets loose or starts to leak, in order to fix it, you have to cut the pipe. And then when you put the cut the pipe, you have to put a couple into it. The other problem is, well, how tight do you want to make this? And if you look at this particular item, this Multiport, you'll find that it's actually pieced together and it has seams. And a lot of times what happens is the builders crank down on this so tight that it actually cracks it, and then you get a leak here. So, bad idea. If you are replacing a Multiport and you have these, definitely do not cut the pipe and replace them doing that. Another device is called a threaded nipple, and this actually is a threaded nipple that would go on a return line so I can see the backwash, but they make them out of CPVC, and that would thread in as well, and then you would put your couple or your footing right over it. Same thing, people that don't know any better put Teflon tape around here. You're not supposed to use Teflon tape on any fittings that's more than 1 inch in diameter, and this is 2 inches, and the smaller Multiports take 1.5 inch. So again, you'd have to use pipe dope on that. We would prefer to use what's called a threaded union. So I have my 2-inch male thread here, and then my slip for here. And of course, when I want to replace that multi-port or have to tighten something up, I can take this union off and it seals right there. So this part would actually go onto your multi-port. And you would tighten it up until this rubber O-ring seals up. And that rubber O-ring is going to seal it a whole lot better than pipe dope. And it's not going to create so much pressure that it's actually going to crack this. And I don't care who the manufacturer is, they all have the same problem if you use a threaded adapter where your PVC comes into the slip and then this threads in, you can crack it. Now, something interesting that you're going to see is if the Bull Builder actually used a threaded adapter and it went in, then I can actually cut this threaded adapter off and not have to replumb it all in order for me to use my threaded union. So that is a nice feature with these threaded unions. We're going to go ahead and we'll give you the part number for this threaded union in 2-inch and this threaded union in 1.5 inch. And we're also going to show you a picture of the wrong way to put this multi-port in using this threaded adapter. And of course, that's the wrong way, and the picture is there, and you want to do it the way that we did it in the video that actually uses the threaded union. Okay, so this is our filter lid, and you'll notice that it comes in separate pieces. So here is our lid gasket, which we're going to make sure is on correctly before we actually put the lid on. And this is our air release gauge. Now, if you ever have to change this pressure gauge, make sure to use a lot of Teflon tape and do not put it on very tightly because it will crack right here and then it'll give a leak. So never, never, never over tighten this. Use lots of Teflon tape. It's not going to leak. There's not that much pressure in it. If you look at the bottom, there is a bevel in it, and you have to make sure that you put the O-ring in that bevel, because if you don't put that O-ring in that bevel and you put this lid on, it will leak at that seam. So you put the O-ring in, and then you're going to put this on rather loosely, because once we get the top on, we're going to want to try and reposition this so that the gauge is in front, that we can actually read it. If you tighten this up now, then you're never going to know where that gauge is going to land. And if it lands in the back of the filter, what are you going to lean over the back of the filter to read it? Well, that's pretty inconvenient. So leave this loose, and in reality, a lot of times you can tighten this up on top of the filter if you do it right. Here's our lid O-ring. You'll notice that it actually has a lubricant on it, which allows it to be held into place as we're putting it on the filter. You want to make sure that the top of the filter is clean and doesn't clean of debris, that the actual threads in here are clean of debris. And then we're just going to spin this on. And as you can see, if I had tightened it up, the pressure gauge wound up on the back. So now I can actually turn it to the front and I can make it so that it's readable. And we'll take note of how it is faced on the lid with the labels and everything else, so that when we take this off, we can actually tighten it up. But first, we want to tighten it up. It comes with a lid wrench. Tighten it to a reasonable amount. Don't kill it, because otherwise it's going to make it harder to get out. So our gauge is going to wind up exactly between these two labels. So when we tighten it up, that's what we're going to do. At this point, we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn our pump on,
and we're going to fill our filter up, and we're going to check out and make sure that we don't have any leaks. Okay, we have pressure checked our filter, and so now we're going to go ahead and get ready to put the sand in it. We don't want all the water in it because it's filled to the top. We bled it out, and so now we're going to open up the valve, the air bleeder valve, and I'm actually going to put this filter into rinse. And what that'll do is that'll allow the water to go out of the laterals and feed back into the backwash line. So that will allow the water, as we're pouring in sand, to keep going out, and we won't overflow the top of the filter. Okay, there are multiple ways that you can actually put the media in the sand in the filter, and some people use all sand. That's going to actually clog up your laterals and eventually restrict your flow. And then when you actually go to do a sand change, you'll wind up having to replace your laterals. So the better option, and if you look in the book and you look at the instructions, it tells you to put pea gravel in. And the pea gravel needs to come up to about an inch or so above the laterals before you start putting in the sand. So depending on the filter, it will tell you how many bags of pea gravel and how many bags of sand to use. So for a TR100 or a JS100, you would use 3 50-pound bags or 150 pounds of pea gravel. And then you're going to use roughly 400 pounds of sand. And sand is very, very particular. Whatever you do, do not use place sand, because place sand is round, and so therefore it does not do a very good job of filtering. The sand that does the best job of filtering has the most sharp edges, and there's about 4 levels of sand, and you notice it says pool filter sand, and the difference between the lowest level and the best level is maybe $2 or $3 a bag. And this happens to be the highest level. It's called Mystic White 2. And that's what we put in our filters. Some people like to use glass, and the glass works great. It doesn't work any better than this particular grade of filter sand. What you don't want to do is you do not want to use zeolite. Zeolite is crushed lava rock, and initially it has a lot of bad features with it, such as you will wind up getting a lot of gray look in your pool from the dust on the crushed lava rock. And even though initially it has sharp edges, it does not release the dirt and the oils and things like that, and it becomes round very quickly, and it just doesn't do a very good job of filtering. So my recommendations are pea gravel and then a very high grade of pool filter sand or glass. So if you look in the book, and we can show you a chart for a JS60 and a TR60 and a JS100 and a TR100, but it is actually in the book and tells you how much pea gravel. Even if you're doing a less expensive filter like the top mounts, you should always fill your filter with enough pea gravel so that you've got about 1 inch of pea gravel or 2 inches of pea gravel above the laterals. Alright, so now we've got our filter filled with sand. Very important that when you put the pea gravel in, after you dump it in, you stick your hand down there and smooth it out so that it's level. And then you're going to put your sand in, and there is something in the top called a diffuser pipe, and you want the sand to be on the bottom of that diffuser pipe, because that would be the correct amount, because then the sand comes up to about here, right? If you start coming up into here, then you're reducing the amount of surface area that the water has to get through the sand. So you definitely want to make sure that you keep it in the largest part of the tank. We put our lid back on. Of course, you can hear the bleeder valve is open, and we are going to start our filter up in backwash. And we're going to backwash it for a typical 3 minutes, And the whole point of that is any of the dusting in the sand, we don't want going into the pool. We want it going out the backwash line. And so we're going to backwash it for 3 minutes, and then we're going to rinse it for about another minute, again, to get rid of the dusting so that we don't get it into the pool. All right, so we backwashed our filter. Took about 3 minutes, and you want to look at the sight glass because, of course, initially the sight glass will be clear, and then after about 30 seconds or so, it'll start getting dirty, and you backwash until you see that clear again. Then shut off your pump. You're going to turn it to rinse, and you're going to run it for about 30 seconds to 60 seconds again. You're looking at the sight glass to see when it gets dirty and when it clears up, because you don't want that particular getting into the pool, because then you're going to have to vacuum it out. So at that point, shut off your pump, put it back in filter mode, get your pump speed set to what it's normally set. And the nice thing about the Pentair valves is they have a start pressure and a clean pressure, which of course you're going to find is 10 psi. So about common for this speed and this filter is we've got about 14, 15 pounds of pressure when it's clean, and so when it needs to be backwashed, we're going to be at about 25 pounds of pressure. So there we have it. I hope you found the video informative. If you did, drop us a like, follow us. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.